welcome back to another episode of Raising Tech. Today, I am joined by Tanner Zoromski, the Chief Revenue Officer for Panelope, which is a digital marketing consulting and strategy firm. Tanner, super excited to have you on the podcast today. A little jealous of your hair. We won't let that take over this episode, but thanks for joining me here today.
Matt, excited to be here. Thanks for having me. Looking forward to getting into it.
Yeah. So, Tanner, a place I like to start with all new guests. What's your story and how did you end up to where you are today?
Yeah, absolutely. I got into digital right out of college. I landed at Panelope about 2 years ago. From there, I initially started out as SEO director, kind of, helping out with the clients, taking over the accounts, building up the system of the business. But since we got that in place, I've recently grown to oversee a lot of the revenue operations and just making sure that we can continue a little bit of the momentum we have behind the agency.
I love that. And I'm sure you've seen so much like change over the years too. Cause SEO is definitely one of those things I think I was first introduced to in 2012, 2013. We are starting our first business. And, it's one of those things I feel like you got to get right, but it's always changing too. As we look at you now, right? You're wearing both the CRO hat and the organic marketing director hat. And I'm wondering, like, how has this dual vantage point shaped the way you see the relationship between search, revenue, and brand today?
I was thinking back to my kind of first boss, my initial mentor, and he said, first thing, we're marketers, right? We sell stuff through the internet and we do it through search and other methods, and just kind of having that foundation is always what I go back to. And then from building on that, we get an SEO. I've helped hundreds of clients over the past 6 years or so grow their organic profile and achieve their business goals. But like they say, the cobbler's son doesn't have any shoes ever. So, kind of trying to figure out how can I take those principles and apply them to a company that I'm helping build is sort of the natural progression from, search director into CRO. And the thing that is most different is just, the KPIs, whether it's getting leads, having conversations, kind of building out your network. That's a new challenge that I'm always excited to kind of lean into. But ultimately, the playbook's very similar. You have your goal, you work backwards from it, and you make sure that that system keeps churning things out.
Yeah, it makes a lot of sense. And, it's funny, I'll go to some of these sales and marketing conferences in the senior living industry, which I know you guys do some work with senior living providers. And like SEO is still very top of mind. I feel like there's always presentations about it and kind of like best
Right.
practices and, something that people are definitely helping with. And I will say early on in our first website, we had cornell.edu to backlink to us, which I've been told is
No
very helpful
kidding.
for SEO. Yes.
Fantastic. Yeah.
Yeah. And I'm wondering if you could like pinpoint maybe like two or three watershed moments that fundamentally changed SEO over the last 10, 15 years. Which would you
Sure.
choose and why do they matter so much?
Yeah, I'm sure there are SEOs with longer track records than myself. But there are definitely a couple points in time that I would highlight as being the biggest in as far as their impact to SEO. First of all, the kind of like pandas eat updates of the tens. So basically, Google really refining what signals it wants to have on a website, kind of putting down any sort of gray or black hat SEO, and just really focusing on those fundamentals around expertise, authority, and trustworthiness. So that's kind of like the old Google, right? But then as far as a moment that was sort of a watershed for me, was that my second year in digital marketing was the pandemic, right? So, just seeing the influx of traffic, just rush to digital, everyone needing a website, realizing that, the future is now, and was a really remarkable time period because we would look at total visitors or search demand for different keywords, and you'd see things that are up like 200, 300, 400% year over year. And it did feel like the heyday a little bit for digital, just because that's where people were moving to. But it totally changed the game in that I think things became more competitive. The SERP became a little bit more crowded with the influx of users. Google was able to monetize maybe a little bit more of that traffic, and we saw an increased presence in ads. And it really did, the behavior changed the ecosystem, I think. And then, of course, artificial intelligence and AI results, LLMs rolling out here. And of course, that's happened in the very recent past, but that is forever going to change things, I think, as we enter the new epoch of organic marketing, I guess.
Yeah, and I will say I think we got to about the 10-minute mark before mentioning AI, so I do think we deserve a medal or a trophy of some sort. Because
Yeah, absolutely.
yeah, because I mean AI, right? It's like the buzziest thing out there, and like I've even starting to see how it's starting to impact things and seeing things come up, and I'm wondering like with AI driven ranking signals and large scale language models, first started creeping into search. I mean, what were the early cues that really told you that, this just isn't another algorithm update?
I think for me, it was the experience. I'm a very skeptical marketer, right? Like I'm not a big shopper, and when I make purchasing events or use platforms, I'm very slow to adopt. But I think just seeing the strength of the experience, the richness of like the tool itself, and kind of understanding that people would love to use it. It gets right to the point. It isn't monetized yet. It's kind of like growth hacker marketing playbook all over again from, the early 2000s for different, browsers. But I think that was kind of the main sticking point. I myself love to use it, and I figured that would be a lot of other people would be using it as well. But I do think it's obviously going to change like the browsers did in the past, where once we hit critical masses of adoption, ads are going to roll out monetization. Of course, everyone's waiting for the data to come out from behind the walled garden, if you will. So yeah, it's big.
Yeah, it's I wonder if it's frustrating because at times too for some of these clients because like even like on Google I'll use ChatGPT pretty much all day every day but like even Google when I search
Right.
stuff like it'll give me that AI summary up top,
Yeah.
which I imagine too if you're a or a business trying to drive people to your site, that can be frustrating at times if you don't want that to take place, but I'm
Yeah.
wondering like
It's
yeah, go ahead.
Yeah, no, it's funny you say that because there's a jockeying, right, between ads and the AI overviews over what comes up first. It's like, at first it was the AI overviews rolling out. Now we have ads, ahead of the AI results. So, both customers and the platform are clearly navigating this at the same time.
Yeah, I think we're all just kind of figuring it out every single day, right?
Yeah.
And I'm wondering like what you're seeing from whether it's some of your client work at Panelope or just kind of in the, industry or as a whole, like what's the single biggest day-to-day shift brands or companies are experiencing in organic search as AI features roll out? Like what are they thinking about? What are they prioritizing?
Yeah, that's a great question. Obviously, it's present in SERP, Google's including the AI overviews or AI mode. But there's also something to be considered around who is adopting it first and what kind of businesses have to move most quickly, right? So we have seen skews in age groups for who uses the tools interchangeably, who's kind of still on Chrome, still on Bing, right? And who's kind of moving towards the ChatGPT, Perplexity, and Gemini tools. But I think once you kind of have figured out your customer base and your audience, right, that you're trying to target, ensuring that your fundamentals are in compliance with best practice. One tip I like to communicate to people that, my SEO mentors have told me is that, HTML is becoming more of a thing, right? Google finally got to the point where they're like, JavaScript, we got it, we can index it, right? But now this new thing has come along. And making sure that content on websites is as structured as possible in an HTML format is like a core technical component for appearing in those places. Outside of that, content, blogs are really slowing down in a big way. People are getting their questions answered without going to websites, which is just a part of the evolution of it. And I am coaching clients on making sure that content is as time and place specific as possible. You want to be relevant and you want to break through the noise with something that has some sort of other attachments that allows it to be prioritized within those different LLMs. So that's kind of how I'm sort of leaning as far as content goes.
Yeah, it's interesting you mentioned the blogs. I mean, I can even speak from my own working experience. Like I used to go to HubSpot's blog. Like I looked at
Yeah.
that as kind of the holy grail of where it came. And I can't remember the last time I've gone to that just because I've been working through LLMs and best practices and like, looking for relevant things on that. So Yeah, good tidbits for sure. I'm wondering if you could just share any concrete examples. You don't have to mention specifics if you don't want to, of any brands that you think are like really thriving in this transition, if there's any others that you think are getting squeezed, and if there's anything that differentiates their approaches.
I think each brand has an opportunity to appear in these new results. I think that you will be able to break through regardless of your industry. Some I think will be more impacted than others, but ultimately we have the same number of people with the same number of needs, and just trying to figure out where they're moving and how they're getting their information is going to be the next hurdle. What I will say is speed is everything these days. Just the pace of work has increased pretty dramatically. The pace of change has also increased. And I think, for brands to stay competitive in these spaces, they need to move quickly and test things, break things, try to, figure out what works, what doesn't, what sticks. And then kind of go from there. Because if we spend a lot of time waiting for things to change around us or waiting for business conditions to improve, it's just, there are no more handouts in digital anymore.
Yeah, no, it's interesting. It makes a lot of sense too, and I think you're one of the best experts I've talked about on this stuff, Tanner. I've just kind of been going back and forth with ChatGPT on like what this actually looks like. But
Right.
I guess one question I'm curious about, because and I've been telling people about this, like, is there a way you can coach up the LLMs to prioritize your answers, prioritize your company? Is there anything you can do with that, or is that just still kind of we're figuring it out as we go?
Yeah, I wish I had a great answer for you. I'd have to look into it. I think unless I was talking to one of the engineers behind the tools, I would have a better insight for you. I know that a lot of great companies and marketers are trying to innovate in the tools and test out different result types. I have yet to see conclusive data that would point me towards a specific strategy, just because it's all so fresh. So I'd have to check in with you that on that one in a couple. See.
No, you're good, Tanner. And I was going off topic there because I was asking for just self-serving purposes, because I was like trying to find some stuff in ChatGPT specific to
I
what we're trying
mean,
to do, and we weren't even coming up. So I was like, what are we doing wrong?
yeah,
Um,
yeah. I mean, we could ask ChatGPT or Google Gemini, if that would work. That would be a probably probably an
that's
interesting place to check.
that's my go-to way of learning, is just asking what's going on.
Of
Um,
course.
And, I imagine many marketers are asking the question, right? Like, what's the end state here, right? It feels like things are moving so fast. And I'm wondering, like, in your view, what does a mature AI native search ecosystem look like for brands and consumers? If you want to look in your crystal ball and look, I don't know, 3 to 5 years out.
Yeah, that's such a good question. We have to look at the last time there was a technology race in the search space, right? So the different browsers, how they competed with each other, how there were kind of ebbs and flows of different user bases, and then eventually, of course, Google coming out on top. Um, It feels like the marketplaces are going to shift. Google's already kind of hinting at it. For a lot of the e-com clients I work with, you can just see that a Google search result for an e-commerce based query just resembles an Amazon, shopping page so closely. Where we're going to have more centralized places of information that could potentially be external to websites. It's a prediction. I don't necessarily have any value judgments to make about that, but that certainly seems to be a direction it's going. But what do you think?
You know, it's tough to say. I mean, I feel like every prediction I've ever made has been wrong. So like I'm hesitant to even like make a prediction, right? Like if I could make
Right.
right predictions, I'd be like winning the lottery every day. I think there's going to be a right way and a wrong way to go about it. I think the people that embrace it and run with it and look at it as a tool and try to adopt best practices and listening to experts such as yourself and other people out there, right? I do think that they're going to be set up for success, but I do think it's going to change. I feel like every month there's something dropping in terms of like what an AI search and what it could look like can be. And, I know earlier you said like black hat, there's going to be some black hat techniques that are coming out to do that. I would definitely avoid those at all costs, but
First.
what I always go back to is like, what are you educating the market about? Like, what valuable content are you providing? Like, what are you giving to the
Yeah.
industry or to the thing, whoever you're trying to help as a whole? Because I don't know. I believe in energy. So if you're going to put out good energy, hopefully it will come back to you. So, I mean, like, it's tough to say. I mean, again, I wish I had a better answer for it, but I just think like leaning into it and not thinking it's just a fad that's going to pass over, I think will help people. That kind of that mentality, that mantra will set up people for success. So, um,
Absolutely. I think that's all accurate.
yeah. And I'm wondering too, because like KPIs, right? Super important any business that you're running, especially in kind of like your digital footprint. And as AI like rewires search journeys, right? Like I'm wondering if there's any traditional SEO KPIs that remain critical. And if there's any emerging metrics that CMOs or marketing leaders should start tracking today.
Yeah, no, absolutely. There are a couple that I would point to. First and foremost, kind of starting out with the AI platforms, thinking about your own rankings across brand and non-brand in different platforms, right? So let's say you go to Gemini or ChatGPT, do an inventory of your top 5 keywords across brand and non-brand, see how the results come up, see how they compare and contrast with Google. And then that kind of just gives you a little bit of a framework and understanding, okay, how am I appearing in the space? How is the LLM representing my organization? Is it accurate? Where is it getting the information from? And then kind of just working through those, ranking metrics and to understand how you can influence the results is sort of where I would start. From there, of course, if you get traffic on site, you get more click-through rates, which I predict will slow as people who have informational queries just get their question answered. Once you get them on site, GA, Adobe, making sure that those platforms are configured to be as accurate as possible and the definitions for all those metrics are set up. But then ultimately, money, right? You got to make your revenue, you got to get your conversions, and then working backwards from there through the items I mentioned would be kind of how I think about structuring your KPIs.
Yeah, makes a lot of sense. And we talked about searching through some of these LLMs and kind of the accuracy and making sure it's there. I remember searching my name in ChatGPT a few months ago, and it said I had my MBA from Stanford, and which is totally false. But I was like, yes, please tell that to everybody in case they ask about me.
Yeah, of
So
course.
yeah, and it will definitely, come with some of that. And I'm wondering too, like if a brand or a company has limited resources, what would you suggest as some, top three moves that they should prioritize now to stay discoverable and trustworthy in this AI augmented search engine results page?
Yeah, I think the first thing I would recommend would just be defining your niche, right? It's a super similar principle to what's been rolled out for organic marketing or SEO more broadly, but get really good and really specific at that topic that's most close to your KPI. If it's one specific product or service, research about it, one localized keyword, and, just really own it, right? And I think through some articles I read or a book about, Amazon, how it was a bookstore, right? And, from there, they're launching people into space. So, once you get really good at your niche and truly own it, then you're able to kind of start, expanding your capture, targeting similar and most approximate niches, and then just really kind of grow out that way horizontally. So if you have limited resources, start small. It's not bad, but for your at bats, make sure you hit them out of the park, and then things will grow.
I feel like every day there's something that we can do, right? And I feel like a lot of the times people think they have to throw a bunch of money at the wall to kind of figure this out, which I think in some cases is true, right? But I do think some of those
Sure.
things you can do and just being more intentional and knowing your audience and like crafting it for that, right? Like makes
Right.
a lot of sense. And then my second and last question here for you, Tanner. How should companies balance AI centric search tactics, right, with some of this broader brand building efforts? So they're not just optimizing for machines, but also forming some of these genuine human connections.
I think about it through like the lens of Google, which has kind of just been communicating to SEOs, just build useful content, right? Build things that people will click on. Build something that answers the prompt. I wouldn't optimize for AI first. I would optimize for your customer first. And just do a lot of customer research, surveys, conversions. Why did we get your business? Why didn't we get your business? And then work backwards, right? Because from there, if you appropriately message it across a number of platforms and think about, how we appear horizontally, that's basically how I think a brand would want to try to appear as successfully as possible in different AI results.
Yeah, I love that. So it's building for the person and the end user in mind. The AI will kind of come after that, right? And there's
Yeah.
probably just put a bunch of binary and like white font at the bottom of your site. Don't do that.
Yeah,
Uh,
something like that. Cart before the horse. Yeah.
yeah, yeah, yeah. And then my last question here for you, Tanner, just any other thoughts worth sharing, whether on SEO, marketing, digital, open-ended question here for you.
I think the biggest question to be solved is the data, right? Basically, without the data, we can't measure change, we can't measure growth, and making sure that you're working with data that you trust from accurate sources, and then crafting a strategy around it is going to be what differentiates your strategy from someone else. So always rely on the numbers. They don't lie typically. So yeah, I think I would just try to figure out, where and when are these going to start coming out, and then go from there.
I love it. Well, Tanner, I'm so excited and so grateful that you've kind of ended on this SEO career path here. So thanks for dropping some knowledge here with us. I definitely learned something myself, and thank you for making some time here today.
Of course, Matt. Appreciate it, and happy to join whatever.
You can find us online at raisingtechpodcast.com, where you can see all of our episodes and contact us to provide feedback or submit an episode idea. We are on social media everywhere at Raising Tech Podcast. If you enjoy Raising Tech, please leave us a review and share with a friend. Music is an original production by Tim Riesig, one of our very own Parasol Alliance employees. As always, thank you for listening.